signified for events whose physical characters are unknown. Thus the spatio-temporal measurements are independent of the objectival physical characters. Furthermore, the character of our knowledge of a whole duration, which is essentially derived from the significance of the part within the immediate field of discrimination, constructs it for us as a uniform whole independent, so far as its extension is concerned, of the unobserved characters of remote events. Namely, there is a definite whole of nature, simultaneously now present, whatever may be the character of its remote events. This consideration reinforces the previous conclusion. This conclusion leads to the assertion of the essential uniformity of the momentary spaces of the various time systems, and thence to the uniformity of the timeless spaces, of which there is one to each time system. The analysis of the general character of observed nature set forth above affords explanations of various fundamental observational facts. Alpha. It explains the differentiation of the one quality of extension into time and space. Beta. It gives a meaning to the observed facts of geometrical and temporal position, of geometrical and temporal order, and of geometrical straightness and plainness. Gamma. It selects one definite system of congruence embracing both space and time, and thus explains the concordance as to measurement which is in practice attained. Delta. It explains, consistently with the theory of relativity, the observed phenomena of rotation, e.g., Foucault's pendulum, the equatorial bulge of the earth, the fixed senses of rotation of cyclones and anticyclones, and the gyrocompass. It does this by its admission of definite stratifications of nature, which are disclosed by the very character of our knowledge of it. Epsilon. Its explanations of motion are more fundamental than those expressed in delta, for it explains what is meant by motion itself. The observed motion of an extended object is the relation of its various situations to the stratification of nature expressed by the time system fundamental to the observation. This motion expresses a real relation of the object to the rest of nature. The quantitative expression of this relation will vary according to the time system selected for its expression. This theory accords no peculiar character to light beyond that accorded to other physical phenomena such as sound. There is no ground for such a differentiation. Some objects we know by sight only, and other objects we know by sound only, and other objects we observe neither by light nor by sound, but by touch or smell or otherwise. The velocity of light varies according to its medium, and so does that of sound. Light moves in curved paths under certain conditions, and so does sound. Both light and sound are waves of disturbance in the physical characters of events, and, as has been stated above, the actual course of the light is of no more importance for the perception than is the actual course of the sound. To base the whole philosophy of nature upon light is a baseless assumption. The Michelson-Morley and analogous experiments show that within the limits of our inexactitude of observation, the velocity of light is an approximation to the critical velocity c, which expresses the relation between our space and time units. It is provable that the assumption as to light by which these experiments, and the influence of the gravitational field on the light rays, are explained is deducible as an approximation from the equations of the electromagnetic field. This completely disposes of any necessity for differentiating light from other physical phenomena as possessing any peculiar fundamental character. It is to be observed that the measurement of extended nature by means of extended objects is meaningless apart from some observed fact of simultaneity inherent in nature and not merely a play of thought. Otherwise there is no meaning to the concept of one presentation of your extended measuring rod AB. Why not AB prime, where B prime is the end B 5 minutes later? Measurement presupposes for its possibility nature as a simultaneity, and an observed object, present then and present now. In other words, measurement of extended nature requires some inherent character in nature affording a rule of presentation of events. Furthermore, congruence cannot be defined by the permanence of the measuring rod. The permanence is itself meaningless apart from some immediate judgment of self-congruence. Otherwise, how is an elastic string differentiated from a rigid measuring rod? Each remains the same self-identical object. Why is one a possible measuring rod and the other not so? The meaning of congruence lies beyond the self-identity of the object. In other words, measurement presupposes the measurable, and the theory of the measurable is the theory of congruence. Furthermore, the admission of stratifications of nature bears on the formulation of the laws of nature. It has been laid down that these laws are to be expressed in differential equations which, as expressed in any general system of measurement, should bear no reference to any other particular measure system. This requirement is purely arbitrary. For a measure system measures something inherent in nature, otherwise it has no connection with nature at all, and that something which is measured by a particular measure system may have a special relation to the phenomenon whose law is being formulated. For example, the gravitational field due to a material object at rest in a certain time system may be expected to exhibit in its formulation particular reference to spatial and temporal quantities of that time system. The field can of course be expressed in any measure systems, but the particular reference will remain as the simple physical explanation. Note: on the Greek concept of a point. The preceding pages had been passed for press before I had the pleasure of seeing Sir T. L. Heath's Euclid in Greek. In the original, Euclid's first definition is Semeion esten numeros outhen. I have quoted it on page 86 in the expanded form taught to me in childhood, without parts and without magnitude. I should have consulted Heath's English edition, a classic from the moment of its issue, before committing myself to a statement about Euclid. This is, however, a trivial correction, not affecting sense, and not worth a note. I wish here to draw attention to Heath's own note to this definition in his Euclid in Greek. He summarizes Greek thought on the nature of a point from the Pythagoreans through Plato and Aristotle to Euclid. My analysis of the requisite character of a point on pages 89 and 90 is in complete agreement with the outcome of the Greek discussion. Note: on significance and infinite events. The theory of significance has been expanded and made more definite in the present volume. It had already been introduced in the Principles of Natural Knowledge, cf. sub-articles 3.3 to 3.8 and 16.1, 16.2, 19.4, and articles 20 and 21. In reading over the proofs of the present volume, I came to the conclusion that in light of this development, my limitations of infinite events to durations is untenable. This limitation is stated in Article 33 of the Principles, and at the beginning of the Chapter 4 of this book. There is not only a significance of the discerned events embracing the whole present duration, but there is a significance of a cogredient event involving its extension through a whole time system backwards and forwards. In other words, the essential beyond in nature is a definite beyond in time as well as in space. Cf. This follows from my whole thesis as to the assimilation of time and space, and their origin and extension. It also has the same basis in the analysis of the character of our knowledge of nature. It follows from this admission that it is possible to define point tracks, i.e. the points of timeless spaces, as abstractive elements. This is a great improvement as restoring the balance between moments and points. I still hold, however, to the statement in sub-article 35.4 of the Principles that the intersection of a pair of non-parallel durations does not present itself to us as one event. This correction does not affect any of the subsequent reasoning in the two books. I may take this opportunity of pointing out that the stationary events of Article 57 of the Principles are merely cogredient events got at from an abstract mathematical point of view.